Hey, good morning, team. It is Tuesday, March 12th. I'm Amy Corr. I'm here with Kevin Van Eck, and here we are at Goose Island. All right, so it is March. Hard to believe we are just moving along in this spring market. So today we thought we'd have a conversation about what agents should be really focusing on right now, and maybe even more importantly, what they shouldn't be focusing on in business. So on that note, I want to jump into this. So let's grab a coffee and let's get into the next episode of Coffee with Amy and Kevin.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning.
Yes. So let's start with what agents are doing but shouldn't be doing. What do you think is the number one thing that you see agents doing that maybe isn't the best use of their time?
Yeah, I think I actually was somebody who did this back in the day when I was in business. So all of us have done it before, but it's one of those things where maybe you've got a couple of transactions and you're excited, right? Especially spring market as things get going. And I see agents spending all of their time on the transaction, right? And I think we have to be careful as agents because whether I've got 2 clients or I've got 20 clients, the reality is you've got to put just a finite amount of time into inspection, communication, follow-up, all the things that, it takes to get a deal done. It doesn't need to take you from 9 to 5 to get the inspection lined up, to make sure that the email communication with the attorneys and your clients. And I'm seeing some agents putting a lot of time and extra effort into that when the reality is, what they might be spending 4 hours on, maybe they can do it in an hour and then they can get back to focusing on what's so critical right now, which is the prospecting piece, right? So instead of, as Ninja says, working in your business for a period of time, which we all have to do, but then going back to working on my business. How am I prospecting? How am I getting more opportunity so that I am not only just working with 2 clients for the entire year, that if my goal is 20 or 25 or even 10, whatever it might be, right? That we are actually getting to that piece where our pipeline is continuing to fill up. So I think right now, cautioning agents not spending all of your time in the transactional piece and focusing a finite amount of time on that and then getting to the prospecting.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I think what happens, people get transactional, right? So that's what leads to that income roller coaster for agents where you get so busy with the business you have, but like you said, you're not working on your business, working on your pipeline or growth, because you can make busy time out of anything and feel like you're busy.
Well, and that's hard, and it's easy. Like sometimes the prospecting piece is uncomfortable, and so it's like, ooh, I can make that extra phone call to the attorney or call my clients again, and we kind of have to get out of that habit and get into what's going to move the needle longer term.
So let's move into that then.
Yeah.
So what do you think is one of the things that agents should be doing, that they have to do?
So, we're continuing to talk about it, and it's probably in every market right now, but inventory is a struggle, right? And I think at some point we just have to stop complaining about it and starting to figure out how am I going to remedy this for my clients if I'm working with buyers or if I just want to get more listings. I just was reading a stat from Zillow, a recent survey, and it said that 82% of sellers who moved in the last 12 to 18 months, it had to do with a life change. Okay. So here's the thing. You might have reached out to somebody 6 months ago who had absolutely no idea that they were going to sell or want to sell, but a life change happened. And, I think the biggest thing is we need to make sure that we're in front of the life changes, because what I caution a lot of agents on is that if you aren't the agent that's in their flow at that point in time, somebody else is going to be. Certainly. So I think it's just keeping after inventory, and being creative too. I think I was talking to somebody earlier about taking a look at people who have investment properties, who are maybe landlords. Take a look at what rented over the last 12 to 18 months. Find out who that owner is and see maybe now is a time that they're going to want to move because they can get a great price for what was originally a cash flow or an investment property. So those types of things, sort of thinking outside the box, but really doubling down on the fact that inventory is going to be one of the big players, not just now, but I would say over the next 2, 3, even 4 years, we're going to see it.
Great advice. So, focus on creating inventory, finding it for your buyers and creating it for your own listing business.
Yeah. It's the name of the game. What do we say? This is an inventory driven business. So,
if there's no inventory, you've got nothing to sell.
I know, right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so let me ask you, what do you think right now that agents are maybe focusing on or spending time on that you don't think is giving them the right return, or, that if they spent less time, it could free them up for something more effective?
I think it's on big dreamy projects. I think it's, we made a joke.
What's a big dreamy project like?
Big dreamy project. I'm
never
going to
have
start a new
those.
podcast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you wouldn't
Vision
know.
board, is that a big dreamy project?
That's doable. That's doable. Wait till you see mine.
I mean, you've been saying for the last 4 or 5 weeks it's coming.
Yeah, but it's going to be perfect.
Big dreamy project.
It's going to be perfect.
Got it.
Wait till you see it.
Okay.
After Q1.
Okay.
Sometime Q2.
All right.
But the big dreamy projects, like agents will talk about starting a podcast. They'll talk about starting a blog. They'll talk about, and they're not equipping themselves. They don't have the tools, resources, skill set to be able to actually bring that to fruition.
Right.
So people spend a ton of time thinking through what equipment they need for a podcast, all of these different resources, tools, where they're going to host it. And then what happens?
Nothing.
Nothing. No business and no podcast. So that's where really focusing your time on things that are going to be revenue generating. And it's cool to have great ideas. It's cool to be thoughtful and creative and creating exposure and reaching the people you need to. But it's also, harness that a little bit and make sure that you are focused on income.
Yeah.
Focused on servicing clients, because that's what's going to allow you to then allocate resources to creating big dreamy projects.
Yeah. And I think for those of us, and I say us because I'm a big dreamy project kind of person, if you get stuck in your way with that, find that person that's going to tell you that it's not always the best idea.
Not that it's not a great idea.
Just maybe not the best use of your time right now. Thank you for correcting that.
Yes.
But it's true. Like, we get in our own way sometimes and think something's a great idea. Find that person to say, like, look, is this the best use of my time? And I say it in all seriousness. I think that's the yin and the yang that we bring to a lot of the things that we do. Is can sometimes have big ideas, and Kevin's like, that's great, but let's figure out what we can actually accomplish and what makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Slim
I
it
love
down.
that.
It's still a great idea, but slim it down so we can do it,
All right, so big dreamy ideas, maybe not the thing for agents. What should they be really kind of honing in on or focusing on for their business right now?
I think this is actually something, no matter what market, that agents could work on. We talk a lot of times about having stories, right? So what are agents struggling with now? And in any market that's shifting or volatile or changing or where there's not clarity is pricing.
Yeah.
And having pricing conversations with sellers and buyers. But for sellers more so right now, I think because there's uncertainty based on headlines or what's happening in the market and all the factors. So I think agents should spend some time documenting and creating stories that help convey how sellers should price. And in two specific ways. I think a lot of times we come up with stories. Well, here's the way I would break it down. I would come up with cautionary tales, right? So not to scare sellers, but to show them what happens by using real listings that sat on the market, went through 6 price reductions, and sold after 285 days, even though market inventory was thin. And then come up with success stories, the agents and listings and sellers that were able to move because they priced appropriately and they got to where they wanted to go on time.
And I love it because I know that in a lot of markets and a lot of conversations I'm having with agents right now, pricing is tough. And we're even seeing it. You see a couple of those outliers where
Yes.
you're like, whoa, that is really priced high. And then you see it happen. 30
Right.
days in, they're making that adjustment. And, even in this market, that can really hurt you as a seller, because I think then people say, what's wrong with the property if it's the only thing that's not moving, right?
Right.
And so to your point, being able to have those stories, so as agents, we can explain that to the seller, because, I think a lot of sellers are looking at like, wow, this is a market where I can get almost anything I ask for a property. But as professionals, we all know that that's not necessarily the case.
Plenty of properties sitting out there. Yeah, so document the stories and have them ready when you need to share them. And people relate to stories. So essentially, as I choke for drama, essentially what happens then is they can relate to the story, so they don't want to be the cautionary tale, and they do want to experience the success you've told them about.
Right, as he continues to choke.
right.
On that note,
My eyes are watering.
so we gave it to you. What not to do? Don't spend all your time on your transactions. You've got other stuff to do. Inventory, you're going to have to continue to go after it. No big dreamy projects. I know that that's very hard. And then stories to get your point across when it comes to pricing. We hope that these 4 little tidbits were helpful for you today. As we always say, make it a great Tuesday. Thanks so much for tuning in. And until we see you next time, remember, you got this.